Today we're going to work on the ultimate fast draw holster again. What I've done to this point is I've stitched up around the lining and the toe of the holster. I have to form the steel lining that's in here around my blue gun, and I'll show you how I do that, as well as I'll walk you through tacking this together, how I do it, and how I do all of my hand stitching, which will apply to how I did all of this as well off camera to save time. Thanks for watching. Let's move to the bench. Good dog. I'm going to try to keep as much of this in frame as possible without knocking my camera over. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the top of this holster. And for that, I will use my Bear and Son peanut. A knife that my brother bought me. And heaven forbid I should ever lose it. I don't know what I'd do without it. For trimming this lining out, I am simply following as close as I can to the heavier leather of the holster. You want to keep an eye on your stitching inside of the holster. I know that's not in frame, what I'm looking at on the inside, but so be it, because I need to see what I'm doing. I think you can see that there. You can kind of feel the heavier leather as you're trimming as well. It works well to have the knife at an angle. I found that just flows nicely. If you're trying to do it, you'll see what I'm talking about. I may do this in 2 segments, prevent it from getting too long. We'll see what happens. Leather working is a little bit more difficult to film than gunfighting, or even short movies. If you haven't seen it yet, there's a short movie on my channel. Very short, to the tune of 2 minutes and 50 seconds, I believe. There's actually 2 actors in it. Okay, and I had already trimmed off the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rough trim this. I still don't want this trimmed exactly, but I don't quite want this much to deal with. There we go. That'll work. Now this side. That'll also work quite well. Okay. This is the leftover thread from when I stitched around the skirt. Trim up a little bit of this. I bet that showed up well on frame, so you'll see what I'm doing when I'm trimming here. Not sure where my dog went. Oh well. Now I just cut these off because I want to show you what I do when I run out of thread. I'm also going to use those for tacks. I need to grab 2 new needles and a piece of thread. For sake of time, I'm just going to grab 2 brand new ones. If I can remember where I put them. So the needles that I use when I sew are from Tandy Leather. Some of the stuff I get is from Tandy, some of it's from Montana Leather. As always, nobody's sponsoring this video. I'm not saying that I'll never take sponsors of any kind. I haven't made up my mind for sure on that one yet. It would depend on if they were willing for an honest opinion or not. These are size 0. One thing I can tell you for sure is that I will never lie about an inferior product for money. That's a guarantee. Now I'm just kind of guessing how much thread I'm going to need. This is probably more than what I'll need. But I hate running out of thread in the middle of a project. Now that slid along and made a tapered cut, which I don't like for threading. I like that cut to be square. There we go. Just pull that out, get it nice and flat. And these are size 0 harness needles. And it's not always easy to get this thread through there. Now that one went through really well. And you can see I pulled it through to flatten it out a bit. Now to lock it in, I stick the needle through the thread, tighten it up by the tail, and then pop that off of the eye, and that needle's not going anywhere. Now I'll do the same thing on this end. And that one went even smoother. Sometimes I'll sit here and fight for 5-10 minutes just trying to thread a needle, and other times they'll thread lickety-split just like that one. Stab the thread, pull the tail, and pop that over. Boom, threaded needles. Alright. That's a very important tool right there. Needle nose pliers. So since I'm tacking in, I'm going to go 2 stitches back. You want to pull that tight, get your needle centered. You want the middle of the thread to be your first stitch, if that makes sense. And I'm just going back through holes that I've already made and stitching over threads that are already there. I apologize if this isn't all in frame. I might adjust my camera a little bit to show more of my lap, because I tend, when I'm making holsters, I tend to work over my lap a lot and just kind of suspend everything. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's how I do it. You can tell I've used that needle nose a time or two for this. And I'll walk you through all of how I got to this point shortly. Yes, I just flung that scrap up onto my bench. My trash can's out of range at the moment. There we go. And I just trimmed those ends off. No knots needed. That's all you need. Okay. I think what I'm going to do for today is work the steel around the holster and get this tacked up. I might get the first couple of stitches in, and then I'll probably call it a day. I'll probably end up showing you how I do the hand stitching, and then do some of it, most of it off the camera, just because it's repetitive and time consuming. What I have in here, and what I used in Tuco the Rat's Paladin rig, is 20 gauge steel. I've done some reading and some looking on different videos and such, and it looks like the steel that they usually use is 22 gauge. So I did purchase some 22 gauge online from some big metal warehouse, whatever. Doesn't really matter where. Unless you want some, then I'll have to figure out where I got it, and I'll let you know. If you want to email me with questions, I am open to that as well. I will share my knowledge with anyone who wants to learn how to do leatherworking. But at 22 gauge, even though it doesn't sound like 22 and 20 would be that much different, it is that much different. This 20 gauge steel is some pretty hard stuff. And I wouldn't want to be trying to form this steel around a real gun either. I can beat up this as much as I want. It's just a $75 piece of plastic. Something else that's worth noting, if you haven't already worked this into somewhat of a round shape, you're going to want it wet as you're trying to form it, or else you will crack the front of your holster. Yes, I've done that in the past. Long past, but I've done it. Matter of fact, I'm going to get that inside wet a little bit just so that it forms around a little bit better. I'm just going to drop it in between the lining. If you haven't seen it in my other videos, there's a little crock, like a big butter crock dish that always sits on my table, and it's got water and dish soap in it. The dish soap is a trick that I learned from a saddle maker that I know. He liked to put dish soap in his water. It helps penetrate the leather quicker. And I've heard, I don't know how much truth is in it, so I probably shouldn't repeat it, but I'm going to anyway. You can do your own research. I've heard that the Blue Dawn dish soap has lanolin in it, which lanolin is good for leather. But also, if you get your leather wet, even with this dish soap water, you're still going to want to oil it up good or treat it with some kind of leather care. Which the Arizona Ghostwriters recently put up a video about the leather care that they use. And I don't remember what it was, but I'm going to try it out. After all, that's where this holster is going to get tested first, is to Santee of the Arizona Ghost Riders. After that, I'm planning on making this into my main speed rig, and I'll build a matching or similar belt for it. And then I'm going to send the whole rig off to see Tuco the Rat so he can play with it for a while. And any of you who decide to buy a holster from me in the future, I just bumped my microphone, sorry about that, will benefit from that because he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to knowing what a holster should and shouldn't do. So I've got everything kind of lined up here, and I'm carefully watching the backside to see where my awl peeks out. Now if it hadn't come out in my stitch groove, I would have readjusted where it was going to come out, but it did come out right in my stitch groove. Might have something to do with the fact that I've done this a time or two. So I went down with my thread, up with my thread. I'm going to go down with my thread again. I think we're doing all right on time, so I'm going to keep going for a little bit here. With my current recording capabilities, I'm limited to 30 minutes of continuous video. Okay. So I went down, up, down, up. That's a tack. Now I'm going to work my way back a little ways. It's kind of by feel. I do a lot of stuff seat of the pants as I go. Never had a problem doing it that way. Some people are a little bit different. But I've found my holsters turn out well. So I'm not going to change how I do things. Now this has been overstitched, which I believe I showed in a previous video. Take this pointy wheel and you just run it along with the leather wet, and that shows you where to punch holes with the sewing awl. I'm going to move this glue gun out of my way for a minute. It's important never to try to shape your holster with a loaded real gun, because you end up pushing and pulling and pointing the gun at yourself. And if you know anything about firearms safety, you know that you should never point a gun at anything you don't want to destroy. Within reason, obviously. But even guns that I do own, like I've got a single action army, I've got Ruger Nuvaqueros, but I'm still using a plastic blue gun. They're not that expensive, and they're actually really hard to break. I've not ever broken one. And I like to have them for shaping holsters because I don't have to worry about them getting wet. See, now this time I'm not hitting that groove perfectly. There we go. Something that I should talk about. This awl is diamond shaped. It's not just a round awl. It's got a diamond shape to it. So long and skinny. Now, if you punch any old direction, it'll make odd-shaped holes. I want it to be punching a slot that's angled like this. If you can see, it's flat across there, angles to the back, flat against this side of the groove, and angles forward there. That's ideally how you want your all-punched hole to look. If you haven't already bought some books from Al Stolman, I recommended books from Al Stolman in another video. There's another one that I didn't mention that I'm going to tell you about right now. Great resource. It is called The Art of Hand Sewing. If you're going to learn how to hand sew, if there's something here that doesn't quite make sense, and I just pulled my tack right out. Sometimes that happens to me. I'll pull too hard trying to cinch it up, and the thread will just slide right out. Partly because that tack is getting short, and partly because I'm getting close to the steel where I'm tacking here. The steel inside the holster adds a whole other difficulty level. Again, I realize I'm not in frame with all of this, but I'm hopefully getting enough here for you to get a good idea of what I'm doing. Okay, that one pulled tight. You can see there, I've got it pulled fairly tight together. Not quite as tight as I'd like. I'm going to squish that a little bit. If you pull too hard, you can rip that stitch through, which is something you really don't want to happen. Especially when you've got a nice tooled holster like this, and you're this close to getting it finished. And you know what? The steel is holding this tip together so tight, I don't even feel like I need to put a tack there. Now I just have to decide where this meets. So I'm going to take a needle and stick it through, just like so, and push. I pull that out. I can peel this apart and peek and see where that needle hit. Okay. So if I punch a hole, again, this is some seat of the pants work. It's just the way it goes. Especially, like I said earlier, that steel liner adds a whole nother gamut. Because usually I can just open this up, close it up, open it up, close it up. But that steel, especially this 20 gauge, holds it in place very solidly. Now, in order to get this stitch line to flow neatly into the holster, this is one critical step. I'm going to take the thread from the back side of the skirt, which is going to become the front side of the holster. Oh boy. There we go. And that's going to stay underneath. So I still haven't made any stitches through the front of the holster. Now I'm going to take this one from the front of the skirt or the back of the holster, and I'm going to go through everything and come right out there. You can see that. Grab the handy pliers. Okay, now we're going to do some hand stitching, the way I do it. This is called saddle stitching. So we come up from the back, and this still isn't pulled tight. This is going to get a lot easier in a minute here, as it's all joining together as a unit. Alright, there I got it through all 4 layers of leather. I'll move these 2 tacks aside. Yeah, my dog's back now. And he's off again. Okay. There we are. This may not be riveting, but you're right, it's not riveting, it's sewing. Riveting would look so tacky. Okay, sorry, that was a bad pun. Unless you laughed and thought it was funny. Let me know if you thought that was funny. Here we go. We're finally going to start